My grandma complied with her husband's request for over 50 years, much to his chagrin. Long. Something someone said to me today reminded me of this tale, and I thought some of you would appreciate hearing it. So, this is my grandmother's story. My family has been telling the tale for decades. Grandpa himself told it to his daughter's fiancé as a lesson in not underestimating his new bride. Grandma told it slightly differently to my mom when she and my father were engaged. This is somewhere between the two versions. It's a lesson in, be careful what you wish for, as you just might get it. Personally, I've always thought that it was hilarious. My grandparents were very old school. Grandpa got a job working for John Deere as a teen and worked his way up the ladder to foreman, then manager. Grandma was a typical housewife in the 1950s and was held to typical housewife standards. She was to cook and clean and be prepared to entertain Grandpa's business associates at a moment's notice. It was her job to make sure the children were taken care of and never got in her husband's way. She was expected to have dinner on the table at 5:30 sharp. When he got home from work, her house and herself were to be impeccably kept at all times, etc. They were progressive and well off enough that Grandma had her own car. She was expected to use it to run the household errands and take the 4 kids to appointments and such. It was important that her husband not be bothered with such things. The household and family were her responsibility. He had a job. Well, one day, Grandpa arrived home from work and not only was dinner not on the table, but Grandma wasn't even there. The kids, teens at the time, hadn't been fed. Their homework was still on the kitchen table. There were unwashed dishes in the sink, and a dozen other little chores hadn't been done yet. Most importantly, Grandpa was inconvenienced. He'd been home just long enough to let his frustration stew into anger when Grandma's car pulled into the drive. He began shouting at her before she'd even had the chance to set down her purse or take off her jacket. He ranted about all the things she hadn't done because she was out, running around, when she should have been home, taking care of the house and making his dinner. He worked very hard all day to provide for this family. Was it too much to ask for a hot dinner when he got home? She'd had a very good reason for not being home, but he never let her tell it, accepting no excuses. But she was a good wife, so she intended to let him vent for a while. Then she would serve him supper and explain what had gone wrong. Then, Grandpa screwed up, as sometimes happens when we speak in anger. He began to blame the wrong thing for his irritation. He began to blame the car and her access to it. He said something to the effect of, "You don't have any business out driving around anyway. You should be home. I should never have let you start driving in the first place. Women shouldn't drive." Quote, "You don't want me to drive?" Grandma asked calmly, retrieving her keys from her purse. "Fine. Then I won't drive ever again." And she set those car keys on the counter, put her things away, and served dinner. And bless her heart, Grandma stuck with that declaration no matter how much more difficult it made life. Grandpa had to take afternoons off in the middle of the week when a teacher scheduled a meeting. He didn't get a moment's peace on the weekends. Between grocery trips and taking the kids to activities or doctor's appointments or for haircuts or clothes, he had to drive Grandma to every Saturday salon appointment. Previously, Grandma had taken herself and the kids to church, letting him sleep. Now he had to wake up early on Sundays to take them all himself. Grandpa was nearly as stubborn as his wife. He held out, expecting her to apologize and ask for her keys back. She never did. Instead, she simply rearranged the household schedule so that he could handle all the driving. Months later, after never getting a single weekend to relax, After having dinner pushed back nearly every day because he had to drive someone someplace, he finally gave in and apologized. He tried to tell her that he was wrong and that she should start driving again. He tried to tell her that he now appreciated all she did to make his life easier. He all but begged her to take those keys. I suspect that Grandma had always disliked driving, because she never did take back those keys. Nothing Grandpa said or did could convince her to get back behind the wheel. He'd said she had no business driving a car and she was going to hold him to that declaration. No matter what. For over 50 years. Until the day she died. Grandma never drove a car again for any reason. Not after the kids graduated and moved out. Not after Grandpa retired. Even after Grandpa's death in the 80s she still refused because my husband always said that women shouldn't drive. TLDR. Grandpa was mildly inconvenienced and told his wife she shouldn't drive. So she stopped driving and he ended up very inconvenienced for a very long time. One of my fav story of my parents is early in their marriage. 47 years this year. Dad commented that my mum didn't iron shirts as well as his mum. Anyways, Dad's been ironing his own shirts for 40-something years now. 50 years of malicious compliance. What a legend she is. So, what was the reason why she was late that one time? My grandpa didn't believe in women driving either. He used to say something along the lines of, "Over my dead body. Will my wife drive my car?" He passed away in his 70s. About a month later, my dad asked Grandma if she was going to sell his car. She told my dad that she had just passed her driving test and would now be driving it. I love that woman. My friend's horrible husband said that to her once, "What was so important that you neglected your family duties?" She was pretty much at his beck and call. He also whined about her not contributing to family finances. So she got a job. Guess who had to cook Christmas lunch that year? Guess who was quite often inconvenienced by her shift work hours? Edit. This would have been around 2000. He was such a prick. I love stories where people are forced to notice what their partner at home, with or without kids, does all day that goes unnoticed to them. The level of petty we all aspire to be. My husband got irritated at me once for taking the garbage out. He told me that he needed to be the one to do the man jobs. I asked him for a list of what the man jobs were. They include but are not limited to garbage, heavy lifting, groceries, the refillable water bottles, etc. Reaching to put things in the upper cabinets. Because I'm short and they could fall on me. Washing the cars, outside chores, etc. I haven't done any of it since. He wants it. He can have it. I think he regrets being so adamant about it now. But to his credit, he does them without complaint. My grandma always had a driver's license but she never, ever drove a car. She was born in the late 1920s. Your grandma is now the mascot of this sub. This is a thing of beauty. This is pretty much our pro-revenge material. I'm so proud. My grandmother did a similar thing but not quite as severe. The day after they got married, my grandparents went to my grandfather's family home for dinner. They were served egg and bacon pie. My grandfather's favorite. They had only been married 24 hours and had spent but one night together as a couple. As a joke, my grandpa said, "My wife has never cooked me egg and bacon pie." Grandma was embarrassed and replied, "No. And I never will." They were married for over 65 years and never once did she cook it. Grandpa did okay because it was a small country town and everyone knew each other's business. Grandpa was well liked within the community, so anytime Grandma went away the local ladies would cook egg and bacon pies and drop them off to him. Grandma knew and didn't care if he ate them. Just refused to ever cook one herself. Your grandma is legendary. Love this. My partner and I are nowhere near as stubborn as these two. But I did accidentally flood the kitchen when after using dish soap instead of dishwashing liquid in the dishwasher once. He told me I should never do the dishes again. And has more or less stuck to that. There should be some MC Hall of Fame for this kinda shit. Wow. He should have known her better, I guess. Hall of Fame status. Please tell me the reason she was late is in the replies here somewhere. That's a great story. What a great story. Really enjoyed reading it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.